When the landlord boarded up my door, he thought he was putting me in my place. Smirking, he had no idea it was his last day playing the boss. He believed he owned the building, but what he didn't know was, I owned it now. Want to know how I pulled it off? It was supposed to be just another quiet morning for Evan Carter, 60 years old. He'd spent the early hours reading the newspaper in his tiny, one-bedroom apartment in a rundown building that had seen better days. Evan didn't care much for the frills of life. He preferred simplicity. But what he couldn't stand was arrogance, and the building's landlord, Rick Thompson, 45, was full of it. Evan adjusted his MAGA hat, worn, frayed at the edges and carrying years of memories. To him, it wasn't about making statements. It was just a piece of who he was. The morning took a sharp turn when he heard the sound of heavy boots stomping down the hallway. Rick Thompson, a burly man with slicked-back hair and a permanent sneer, appeared outside Evan's door, banging on it like he was trying to break it down. "Evan, open up now!" Evan opened the door slowly, leaning on the frame with his usual calm demeanor. "Morning, Rick. Something I can help you with?" Rick's eyes went straight to the hat. He scoffed. "Yeah, help me by paying your damn rent on time." Evan raised an eyebrow. "It's not even late. Due date's tomorrow." Rick stepped closer, towering over him. "You're lucky I let you stay this long. That hat? That attitude? This building doesn't need your kind hanging around." Evan's face remained calm, but his eyes narrowed. "You sure you want to do this, Rick?" Rick grinned, pulling a hammer from his belt. "Do what? Remind you whose building this is? You'll see." Before Evan could respond, Rick stormed off. Moments later, Evan heard the sounds of wood slamming against his door. Evan stepped into the hallway to see Rick and 2 maintenance workers boarding up his front door, nailing planks across the frame. "Seriously?" Evan called out. Rick smirked, not even bothering to turn around. "Consider it a motivational reminder, old man. Maybe next time you'll pay early." Evan stood there watching as Rick hammered the final nail. The landlord turned around, grinning like he'd just pulled off the joke of the century. Evan didn't say a word. He just walked away, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Rick had no idea what was coming. The next day, Rick was basking in his self-perceived glory. He strutted around the building, chest puffed out like he was king of the castle. He made sure to check on Evan's door, taking pleasure in seeing the boarded-up frame. "That'll teach him," Rick muttered to himself, laughing. But by mid-afternoon, something unusual happened. A black luxury SUV pulled up in front of the building, followed by 2 men in suits. They stepped out, their crisp attire and serious expressions clashing with the dingy surroundings. Rick, intrigued and slightly nervous, approached them with his trademark smirk. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" One of the men, tall with silver-streaked hair, handed Rick an envelope. "You're Rick Thompson, correct? Owner of this property?" Rick nodded, his confidence wavering. "Yeah, that's me. What's this about?" The man gave a tight-lipped smile. "Consider this your formal notice. The building is under new ownership, effective immediately." Rick's smirk disappeared. "What? That's impossible. I didn't sell anything." The man gestured toward the SUV. "You'll want to speak with the new owner." The back door of the SUV opened, and out stepped Evan Carter, wearing a sharp suit and, of course, his MAGA hat. Rick's jaw dropped. Evan adjusted his tie and smiled. "Morning, Rick. Let's talk about motivational reminders, shall we?" Rick was seated in his office, or what used to be his office, while Evan stood calmly across the desk, the 2 suited men flanking him like bodyguards. The room felt tense, the air thick with Rick's panic and Evan's quiet authority. Rick finally broke the silence. How did you even—" Evan leaned forward, resting his hands on the desk. "Turns out, When you save instead of spending on fancy cars and flashy suits, you can afford a lot of things, like this building. Rick stammered. You can't kick me out. I've run this place for years. Evan raised an eyebrow. Funny, that's exactly what you tried to do to me yesterday. Rick's face flushed. That was a joke. I didn't mean... Evan held up a hand. Save it. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to make things right. Rick's relief was short-lived. Evan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You have 24 hours to pack up and leave. Consider it a motivational reminder. Rick's protests fell on deaf ears. Evan turned to leave, pausing at the door. Oh, and Rick? Next time you try to push someone around, make sure they don't own the ground you're standing on. As Evan